Hi, Andy.
Hi there.
Andy Paice.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking to me today. I was interested to have this conversation because I know that two of your passions are Buddhism and now voice dialogue.
Yep.
And I'm kind of intrigued to see how the two kind of match
Came
or marry or come together. Right?
Yeah.
But before we do that, could you just tell me a little bit about how you got into Buddhism
Sure.
in the first
Yeah.
place?
Yeah. That was quite a long time ago. It was in the 90s, about 94, 95. I just finished university.
Yeah.
Actually, it was just towards the end of university. I went out to France, and previous to that, I just started looking at books about meditation.
Okay.
And I was on a kind of spiritual quest at the time, I suppose.
You were studying religion at university?
No. It was just quite simply French and Spanish.
Oh, okay.
So I was out in France in a French university doing my year abroad.
Okay. But you got a personal interest in, you said, a quest or in
Yeah. I had at that time I'd already started. I'd seen somebody meditating when I was in the halls of residence, looking blissed out and everything. Wow, what's going on here?
Okay, right.
So I'd already started meditating and had what I considered to be a few experiences,
Okay.
and then I went out to France and made friends with a German girl out there who was already Buddhist, and she was going to a Buddhist center, and it just happened to be across the road from where I was living. Went along there, met some lamas from the Tibetan tradition, and then progressively got into it, I suppose.
Right.
I found the kind of from the meditation that I'd done before, I could relate somehow to what the teachings were telling me. So I had some confidence in the whole path of meditation and the Buddhist path.
And this was particularly Tibetan Buddhism as opposed to Zen Buddhism or any other?
Yeah, not because there was no. It was just purely the tradition I came across, and that I had I was happy listening to those people, and just found that good. Although I was also interested in Zen and all the others. It wasn't that, it was just I felt at home in that tradition somehow. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that you felt so at home that you actually decided to do a retreat for 3 years.
Right, yeah. Well, I went back to England, started going to a Buddhist centre here, and then one day I came out to see my friend who'd actually gone to live in the monastery. This German girl, she became a nun in the monastery there.
Okay.
Went to visit her, met some very inspiring Tibetan lamas, and I had a kind of I spent a week there, and at the end of the week I just my deepest wish was just, I want to stay here, I want to stay in this monastery, I want to really go further along this Buddhist path and find out about myself through this path. So
and that path, by the way, that's called dharma in the Buddhist tradition, isn't
dharma.
it? Okay,
Exactly,
great.
yeah.
Okay,
Dharma.
so you followed the dharma.
Yeah,
let's say.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and you became a monk.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long were you in the monastery?
I was in the monastery. Well, I went into the monastery about 98. I became a monk. I took the monk's vows. They weren't the full ordained vows of a monk, but I took monk's vows in year 2000, and worked in the office there, reception, did translations and stuff. Learned a lot of practices, and in 2001 I started my 3-year retreat. And after 3 years, then I continued on the monastery afterwards as well.
Okay.
For a time, yeah.
But here you are, back outside the monastery.
Right.
You're not dressed in robes, so. So what happened?
Well, I gave back my vows in 2007, but there was a kind of a whole process that led up to that. It was during my retreat. I did a 3-year retreat, as I said, and in that retreat there was, I think everybody goes through all kinds of difficulties. My personal difficulties, looking back now, I definitely say were kind of psychological. All kinds of neuroses were coming up, all kinds of undealt with issues from before, from childhood, all kinds of difficult things. And but I didn't really understand what was happening to me so much, and just a lot of tension, a lot of judgments towards others, and
so you'd be doing the meditation and maybe getting blissed out, and then get into negative interactions with your fellow monks.
Sure. I mean, you can sit down and do a meditation on breathing in the worries and the suffering of the world, and feel quite open, feel very benevolent and all that, and then obviously you just come downstairs, have lunch with everybody, and there'd be that same guy who's always annoying you, saying the same stuff again and again, and just that arrogant one. Oh, how dare he say that stuff?
So you were noticing that going on inside.
Oh yeah.
And I understand that you read a book at some point that really kind of helped you understand what was going on here.
Yeah.
What was that?
That was towards the end of the retreat. In the third year, I was recommended a book by an author called John Wellwood, and he'd written a lot about the kind of interaction between people who are doing spiritual path like Buddhism and psychotherapy. So it's the kind of convergence of the two. And he has written a lot about this concept, what he calls spiritual bypassing.
Interesting.
And so I found out from reading this book that I was kind of archetypal spiritual bypass. Basically, someone who does this is someone who's gone into a spiritual practice through a large part of that motivation has been through wishing to avoid developmental issues, getting a job in the world, or the messiness of relationships, or power, money, all these kind of messy areas in life.
So in voice dialogue terms, you kind of identify with the spiritual path, with the dharma,
very much,
and disown, as we say in voice dialogue, the other stuff, that messy stuff you're talking about.
Actually, my name in Tibetan was Munlam, or is Munlam. It means spiritual aspiration. So I think, I would very much identify with this spiritual aspiration, and everything else was kind of blocked out or really not accepted. I pretty much judged all these other parts of myself as being very worldly and not useful. And
so the spiritual part of you would look at the other stuff and judge it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how did you get in touch with voice dialogue, and how does that impact your path?
Yeah, I think the whole interest in the psychological side, the psychotherapy. Once I left the monastery in 2007, although I kept good contacts with the community, I left the monastery, and just on internet I came across a Zen master who was kind of drawing on voice dialogue techniques to kind of what he feels is a kind of integration of psychology and Zen practice. And I found that very interesting, and he was obviously speaking from these different voices, and I tried it out myself, and I found, wow, I do have a vulnerable part, I do have an angry part, and the interesting thing that I found was that each of these parts really had a use, a role, and which was something that I never looked into before. I thought, from the Buddhist teachings, often there can be an interpretation that anger, jealousy, lust, all these kind of emotions are something poisonous. So I kind of had always pushed that down, and through doing this I realized, no, actually they have something, they have information, there's a gift in them.
And I know you've spoken about this before, but compassion. Where does that fit in?
Well, yeah, sure. That's one of the major elements of Buddhism, is trying to cultivate compassion and develop compassion for others, and seeing that we're not separate from others, and trying to empathize. Obviously, a lot of I had a difficulty with compassion was that I, trying to cultivate it, but obviously, it's like in retreat there was this guy.
Right.
It's difficult to have compassion for somebody else if we were always judging them,
Right.
So what I found with voice dialogue is that actually getting in touch with the arrogant part of myself,
the thing that you were judging him
for, exactly. When I get in touch with that inner arrogant part, or the inner angry one, or the inner lustful one, that then there's no longer any need to judge those in the in the world, because I just see them as reflections of what I have in myself. So there's a kind of immediate acceptance of what's going on out there, whereas before it was kind of trying to force myself to feel compassionate for something.
So it's a kind of a natural compassion. It's just it's a kind of byproduct of the process of embracing the different aspects of psyche.
Totally, yeah. And that's it's quite interesting, because this is leads me on to another point where I think actually, although I don't meditate as much as I used to now, I find that when I do meditate, there's something more flowing, more natural in that. I think I had so much energy tied up in avoiding certain parts of myself that when I was meditating, there was a lot more activity, there was a lot more kind of turbulence, you know.
Well, the effort to keep things out, as it were, as opposed to come and sit with me.
Even in, you know, in Buddhist practice, there's this notion of letting go. When you sit down, you'll be aware of your thoughts, you'll let them go. But somehow, I think it's very hard to let go of something that we've never really owned, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So we can have anger coming up. I used to have anger coming up in my meditation all the time. And I thought, just let it go, just let it go. But it, you know, it's just like a constant stream coming. And now that I feel a little bit more in touch with the anger and the gift that it has, and you know, there's a kind of embrace, more of a feeling of embracing that anger, that now it's not a problem so much.
So I'm getting the sense of you found a balance between the dharma, the path, the way, and the psyche, the multiplicity of who we are.
Yeah, I feel there's
working with voice dharma.
Definitely. There's definitely some kind of that's happening. Yeah, it's not by any means finished, but it's in process, and I feel that something is becoming more balanced. Yeah.
The journey continues.
Definitely.
Andy, thank you so much. It's been fascinating talking to you.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.